Hi, friends. Welcome to Small Groups Part 4. This is the final round. I'm Rabbi Jason Rosner. I'll be your quasi-host for tonight. We have some sources to look at, grouped in three groupings around what the Jewish ethical tradition asks of us. I'm going to give you three categories. You can choose any of them. The first you'll see below is a requirement that we treat the workers and everyone involved in the supply chain of our food ethically. We have an obligation to pay our workers on time, make sure they're adequately paid, make sure that the supply chain is fair and that we're paying to promote companies that reflect our Jewish values. The second is on what's called Sar Balei Chaim, that is, inflicting pain on an animal, which is unnecessary and cruel. This is something that is a long-standing injunction within Judaism, and in recent years, if you've driven up the 5 freeway towards San Francisco, you'll see concentrated feedlots. Now, for those who have been following agricultural developments in the United States, you may have noted that animals are farmed on smaller and smaller bits of space, and they're farmed with an idea of getting maximum meat production as quickly as possible, and this leads to what we would call cruel and inhumane practices. Judaism is quite firmly opposed to this idea because we don't really own the planet. We're sort of stewards of the planet for God. And so we don't have the right to exploit indefinitely because the planet on which we would live needs time to regenerate, and the animals which we share the planet with require that we treat them with respect. For those of you who saw part 1 of this video, they were both filmed at the same time. You saw it a few weeks back. You noted that my cat was attempting to have an unwanted cameo. She has Torah to teach as well. So the third section, which I think may be particularly interesting, is around food as a social lubricant or a connector. And Judaism has always felt a tension here. We have been concerned that if we allow people to drink together, they might marry each other. And there's always been this fear within Judaism that we're numerically small, and that if we allow ourselves to marry too freely into the population without care for the preservation of our cultures and values, that we'll simply be diluted. Source number 3 talks about wine. Wine is the biggest and most controversial Jewish food, and I would say the one that you may find to be fairly interesting. Wine is divided into different categories, but wine is the ultimate food that deities in the Near East enjoyed, including ours. And our deity got very jealous if we drank wine that was poured out to another deity, and that nowadays we would call this consecrated wine. And if you look through your sources in the packet, you'll see your bonus question having to do with Mevushal wine. But Jewish winemaking is very interesting. It has a storied history, and you can read all about it in the Talmud in the section called Avodah Zarah if you wish. But for much of Jewish history, there has been a concern about the purchase and consumption of non-Jewish wine. Now, one segment of my family is from the town of Dukla in Poland, and that was a wine growing and trading region across the border there. And Jews, as you may notice, are involved in the production of wine, both for Jews and for non-Jews, and the sale of both kinds of wine. Finally, and I want to leave on an enjoyable note, some years back I went to visit one of the historic Jewish communities of the south of France, and they had a Passover oven for the cooking of matzah. And what we learned on the tour of this historic Jewish community is that the authorities of the town, the Catholic authorities, during the early modern period, didn't want Jews to sell Jewish food to the non-Jewish community for fear that if you ate together, you would marry each other. And so, but because matzah has always been an enjoyed cracker among Jews and non-Jews, an illicit trade in matzah developed. And so you can imagine Jews with long coats, matzah for sale, as they walk through the town. And so the synchronicity between Jewish food and non-Jewish food, it's impossible to miss. You'll note, finally, with cholent, which is our case study for today, that not only is it a Jewish food that has picked up influences from the non-Jewish environment, but it in turn gave back and influenced French cuisine, as Ashkenazic Jewish food has influenced American cuisine. If you don't believe me, I invite you to visit Genghis Cohen in Los Angeles. All right, my friends, that's all for now on synchronous Jewish food customs, Jewish Chinese food customs, Jewish Japanese food customs, Jewish Indian food customs, all kinds of different food customs. And with that, I wish you bon appetit and b'tei avam. Take care. Bye-bye.